Shabbat Shalom. It's a pleasure this morning to welcome a good friend of mine, Rabbi Dan Horwitz. We grew up together, officiated at each other's weddings, baby namings for our first children. Rabbi Horwitz wrote the book Just Jewish, which builds on his many years of experience engaging millennials and young Jewish professionals, committed to fostering a joyful Judaism that is inclusive, inspiring, and relevant. In addition to rabbinic ordination, he holds three master's degrees and a law degree, and has worked in many different places, both formal and informal. In particular, was the founding organizational rabbi for Moishe House globally, a young professional organization working with young Jews in their 20s and early 30s, and was the founding director of The Well, which you'll hear maybe a little more about later. We're excited to have Rabbi Dan Horwitz speak now and after lunch. But The Well is an organization built in Metro Detroit for young professionals, Jews in their 20s and 30s, and was a part of the inspiration for The Bridge, which we have built here through B'nai Yeshurun for young Jews in Cleveland. So it is really a wonderful pleasure. In addition to that work, he served as a congregational rabbi, the CEO of a JCC, most recently as CEO of the Jewish Federation of Nashville, and is just starting a new position with the Jewish National Fund. And we're excited and looking forward to learn with you this morning and after lunch.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Rabbi Foster. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm battling a little bit of laryngitis, so you're really going to have to forgive me. I'm going to be very expressive, but not necessarily loud. So there is a commonly told joke making the rounds these days that goes something like this. How do you know if someone is a vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you within a minute of meeting you. The joke works for those who do CrossFit too, by the way. And while I'm not personally a vegan, I did give up eating meat at age 22 and dairy soon thereafter. I eat kosher fish, eggs, and honey. I'm not social suicide. I'm parv, okay? And yet there's no question that when I walk by a barbecue restaurant or when there's a Rosh Hashanah brisket being prepared in the kitchen, my mouth starts to water. I can't help it. The smells are just unbelievably delicious. Now, it's this mouth-watering response to our sense of smell that helps me understand why our ancestors offered animal sacrifices to God. Personally, like most Jewish millennials, I actually don't believe in a God who has a nose and likes the way things smell. But our ancestors, in trying to describe the indescribable energy source that permeates this world that we call God, ascribed human characteristics to it. They liked the way that barbecue smelled, so God theoretically should also have a nose and like the way that barbecue smells. So we're going to train a whole class of people who we'll call priests, who functionally are going to be barbecue pitmasters, so that we can offer up lots of animal sacrifices so that God will find the odor pleasing, what the Torah calls reach nichoach, and thus be happy. Had there been Netflix back then, there likely would have been a barbecue competition-style show featuring the priests. Now, admittedly, I've always struggled with the notion of priesthood, as it creates an inherent class difference. And yet I understand that at a time when animal sacrifice was the norm, having experienced animal sacrificers take the lead made sense. The alternative could be just a bit messy. Now let's be real. When you're dealing with the mass slaughter of animals, before they make it onto a grill or altar, the smell is probably not so appealing. Butcher shops don't smell the same way as barbecue restaurants. Slaughterhouses are probably not so wonderful either when it comes to aromas. So this week in Tetzaveh, we receive instructions on how to construct the incense altar, on which we're told to light incense twice daily. Now, the Rambam, Maimonides, has a rational take on why we're instructed to do this. This is from the Guide to the Perplexed. Since many beasts were daily slaughtered in the holy place, the smell of the place would undoubtedly have been like the smell of slaughterhouses if nothing had been done to counteract it. They were therefore commanded to burn incense there twice every day, in the morning and in the evening, in order to give the place and the garments of those who officiated there a pleasant odor. There's a well-known saying of our sages, quote, in Jericho, they could smell the incense burnt in the temple, end quote. This provision likewise tended to support the dignity of the temple. If there had not been a good smell, let alone if there had been a stench, it would have produced in the minds of the people the reverse of respect. For our heart generally feels elevated in the presence of good odor and is attracted by it, but it abhors and avoids bad smell. That's from Maimonides, well over 1,000 years ago. Sometimes our tradition can be very logical. The place stinks, so we're instructed to burn incense to cover up the stinky smell. And apparently it took quite a bit of incense to do this if the smell carried all the way to Jericho. But Maimonides goes further, pointing out that the hearts of people feel elevated when surrounded by good odors. Anyone who's gone on a date with someone who didn't shower beforehand can probably relate. And no, this sermon is not brought to you by Acqua di Gio by Giorgio Armani, the cologne I wore in college, which is somehow still available at Macy's. But seriously, our tradition places significant value on scent and isn't shy about diving into its mystic linkages. The nose and the soul are connected during the creation narrative. Vayitzer Hashem Elokim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama, vayipach be'apav nishmat chayim, vayi adam lenefesh chaya. Then God formed Adam from the dust of the earth and breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life, and Adam became a living soul. God could have breathed life into Adam through his mouth, but instead it's the nose that's used to give life. Unlike the mouth, the nose's passageways are, absent congestion and seasonal allergies, always open, allowing for breath and divine flow. The rabbis of the Talmud saw additional connections between the nose and one's soul as well. For example, they teach in Barachot, Ezu davar sha'neshama nenet mimenu, ve'ena guf nenet mimenu. Ha'eve omer ze hareach. What is something that the soul derives benefit from, but the body does not? Scent. Now, smelling the Rosh Hashanah brisket in the oven clearly elevates my soul, even though in smelling it, it does nothing nutritionally for my body. And this special connection between scent and soul can also help explain why we smell spices as part of the Havdalah ceremony at the end of Shabbat. The Talmud teaches that Reish Lakish said man is given an additional soul on Friday, but at the termination of Shabbat, it's taken away from him. When Shabbat ends, we're taught that the extra soul that we received for Shabbat departs, and smelling spices at the conclusion of Shabbat, above and beyond allowing us to bring the sweetness of Shabbat into the following week, is meant to both revive us, serving as spiritual smelling salts, if you will, and to simultaneously soothe the remaining soul that is now left alone. Now, like many aspects of temple worship, certain things that were done then we overwhelmingly no longer do today. In fact, as far back as the Talmudic period, lighting incense has been looked at suspiciously, with the rabbis associating it in Barachot with witchcraft. So while we don't burn incense in synagogues, generally speaking, and on Shabbos, obviously, we wouldn't kindle a flame to burn anything, I can't help but wonder if there are ways we can better use our senses of smell to uplift our souls on a regular basis. What would it look like to have the option of being sprayed with a lavender-scented water when departing tefillah, prayer services, the way some instructors do at the close of yoga classes? Perhaps there's a perfume or cologne that we designate specifically for Shabbat, or that we put on whenever we're getting ready to pray. Or perhaps one way we prepare for Shabbat on Friday afternoons is by burning a scented candle or using Febreze, or striving to have our homes filled with fresh baking challah, or to have cinnamon sticks in shul. I don't have all the answers, but I'm really interested in exploring how together we can bring intention to elevating our spiritual experiences. And our tradition teaches that scent is an avenue worth pursuing. Now, at the same time, you'll recall that Maimonides also makes clear that we tend to avoid people and places who don't smell great. So as we strive to enhance our own spiritual experiences through our sense of smell, it's essential that we also think about how to make the whole world smell better. That is, thinking beyond ourselves and bringing intention to helping those who may not have access to tools for basic hygiene. Our ancestors knew that scent was a powerful way to connect with our souls and with God, elevating our hearts, and that we should strive to fill our lives with wonderful scents. This barbecue smells loving vegetarian agrees. Shabbat shalom.